And we're live. Welcome back for another high vibe conversation. Joined with me today are the high vibe women. And today we are going to, oh, wait, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Shel Shapiro, your host. And today we're going to be talking about when we listen. And this comes up in so many different ways, whether you are having a conversation with somebody and you are listening to hold space for them, whether you are listening to just respond and dive back in and have your answer like preset and ready to go. Maybe your mind's jumping all over the place and you are pretending to listen and not really taking anything in. Or maybe you need to do that for yourself and quiet your mind and your body to see what's coming up for you when we listen to ourselves. So those are just some of the ways that are coming up for me right now when I think about what happens when we listen. I'm going to dive right in with Dorit today and say, Dorit, what's coming up for you when we think about when we listen?
Oh, that's a big question. And I'm really fascinated with the topic of listening because everyone wants to claim that they are a listener, but well, they get quite easily, what's it called? Called out. So when they don't even remember your name when you introduce yourself, or ask the same thing that you just told them, and things like that. And that's a really big turn off for me when people are like that. So I try my best to be a good listener myself, because I know how annoying I feel it is when people do that to me. I trained a lot to listen to people when I worked in retail as a beautician, selling makeup, and creams and beautician stuff. And also when I worked at the pet shop, trying to find out what people really want. You know, they may come in and ask for a cream or a good brush for the dog, or something like that. But what is it that's the real problem? What is it that they really want to solve? So by listening and asking questions and digging deeper, instead of just finding that cream or finding that brush and taking their money and send them on their way, I would always try to find out and listen and ask them and kind of engage in a conversation to find out what they really wanted. And if they didn't buy anything right there and then, I certainly would at least have suggested things like a different kind of dog food, or a cleansing routine, or like a serum, or any other thing that would enhance their feeling of getting what they really needed and wanted. Listening to myself, I have not been good at doing that. So that came crashing down with the burnout. So I had to learn to listen to myself too. I was more aware of everyone around me than to listening to my own body and what I needed. So that was a big lesson for me. I'm actively listening now during meditations and walks, and try to be more aware of what my body needs and wants. Then I got the training as a leadership by heart coach and a hypnotherapist, and I really have to listen to people. And now I just don't listen to their words, but how they breathe, how their voice change when they're talking about something, all those subtle little nuances that can kind of indicate that there is something lying under there that needs to be addressed. So yeah, listening is very important in my life, both for me and for the people that I serve, so to speak. Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about what you're talking about, Dorit, and how like you're listening to find out what somebody actually needs as opposed to what they're saying verbally that they need or want. And you're right, it's that subtle nuances of like their body shifts, the way that they change their demeanor or their position or their attitude, the way they're carrying themselves, like as they're talking and saying what they're saying, because there's more listening that needs to happen than just the person in front of you, right? You got to take it all in a little bit. And for me, I've recognized that, like, even in a conversation earlier this week, I was on a phone call and somebody said something and I could hear some arguing going on in the background a little bit. And I heard what the person was saying and I heard what the person in the background was saying. And then I heard everything in between, as things like were hitting the counter and like shuffling. And then that person came back to me and they were like, all right, they had their ask of what they needed me to do or wanted from me. And I could still feel the tension that was between the two other people. And I can't even see them. I could just feel it through the phone. And I had this physical reaction, the way that it came, what the ask was, the way that it came out, because I was already in that environment of hearing all the other things going on. And I laid in bed this morning. It's still 9 o'clock here over on the West Coast, so still getting my day started. And I was laying there for quite a bit thinking, why did I have such a visceral reaction to what I was hearing? Why did it make me feel that way? And why am I cringing just even thinking about it again? And why did my body immediately want to say, no, that's not something that I want to do, when I actually probably don't care about doing the thing that they asked me to do. Like, it's just something that I could easily do and not give it a second thought. But it was the way that it was delivered, everything else that was going on in that setting that, for lack of a better word, triggered me to have this visceral reaction. And so I was laying there this morning thinking about, why did I have that response? And I was unpacking it. I was listening to myself and my body. So it's twofold. I was listening to what was going on around me, and then I took some time to really think about and unpack what's going on with me right now. How can I navigate this better? How can I not have those reactions, or what's causing them, so that I can work through them? And it was kind of eye-opening because I hadn't thought about it necessarily from that perspective. And maybe I can put that into better practice in the moment of hearing those things, as opposed to having to unpack it after the fact. So listening is an active challenge. It is something that you have to intentionally think about. It's not just a matter of having a conversation and tapping into what's on the other end. You have to be present in so many different ways to listen. Whew. What's coming up for you ladies? What's going on over there?
I loved everything you just shared, Shallendort. I remember moments when I felt that I was truly heard and seen. And it was as if this person gave me permission to be exactly where I was, because we're constantly shooting on ourselves that we should be somewhere else or do something differently. And someone being completely present with me, giving me the permission to just be and take up, the space that is mine in this world, and feel what I feel, gave me the opportunity to sort things out for myself and find the sense of clarity, that I needed to take action, to take that next step. So listening is such a powerful thing, and we don't really need a master's degree to be a good listener. And I just see it every day in my coaching and just in the way that we show up for each other at work, that it's just magic when someone is holding that space for us. And it really communicates the intention of care. And for me, trust is like, I like to say, it's the currency of every connection. Like, there's no way to build or go forward if there's not trust. And being present and listening to another person is communicating that you have good intentions towards them. So it's such a powerful thing to to develop or to, put some effort into truly being present with another person.
I'm thinking about what you shared, Jenny. And it reminds me of how you always say, like, knowing where you end and the other person begins, and finding that dividing line of like, I hear you, I see you, I'm holding space for you, but I will not absorb and take on those things. I'm here with you and I support you, but like you're not actively like you're making a conscious decision to witness them without taking all that on yourself. And I love that. Um, I love working on being able to do that better for myself, because it's a challenge. As a I'll say recovering still. I'm recovering people pleaser, actively working on not doing this and jumping into solving people's problems. I'm trying to be better at listening and not automatically going to them with like, all right, here's what I think you need to do. It's I hear you, I see you, I'm holding space for you. How would you like me to support you in this? What do you need from me? And giving them the freedom and the choice to tell me what it is that they would like, because me just inserting myself, as much as that might be the thing that they actually need, even if they're not saying it, they're not aware yet to know that that's what they need, and it might fall on deaf ears in return, and they might not be able to receive it, which on the flip side, we all know about not being able to receive things. So yeah, that's something else for me to unpack another day. How about that?
Right? That's like the difference between empathy and sympathy. So you can do the holding space and at best you can understand what they're going through, but you're not them. And really, when somebody is in like sympathetic, it is can be kind of a diss to the person on the other end. It's like pity or someone feeling sorry for us. And yeah, that's probably a whole other topic we could we could look at, empathy versus sympathy. I love it. For me, I've been told I'm a really deep listener, and that would go along with the clarity coaching. And yet, I know I'm not a real good listener, especially when I can't. Um, if something comes into my mind to say, I can't hang on to it, and then it's just gone. So that gets frustrating. So, it's pretty easy for me to just be interrupting people instead of really listening. So it's almost like on two extremes for me. So yeah, that's what came up for me. Like on the core passion assessment, my number one is recognition. I know what to do, and I know how to do it. And the second is compassion. So I want to do that for everybody. Well, guess what? Not everybody wants you to do that for them, like you were saying, Shell, which then kind of gets into um, stepping into sympathy, and that can take you like way away from boundaries versus empathy. So that's what I got out of it.
All right, Stina, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this. What's coming up for you? Which one of those things do you want to respond to?
I love that when you leave me till the end, you're like, what's the book Stina's been writing over here while we're all talking? I was thinking about listening as a copywriter. Like writing copy, when you're writing copy, you have to be thinking about the listener. You have to be thinking about the reader. And it's unique because most copy is not actually a conversational exchange. So it's on a website, it's on an email, it's on a blog, it's on an ad, all of the things that we see online and consume, or even a podcast, a video. It's all just coming in, and we're just listening, receiving, hearing, reading all of those pieces of content. So as a content creator or a copywriter or just someone online, when we talk, there's not as much opportunity for engagement from the listener. Even if somebody's like writing a comment, it's not like having a two-way conversation. So as a copywriter, I have to sort of predict the listener. And as a listener, there's, I think, two really important components of listening. One is like listening is learning. So when you're listening and you're receiving something, you're learning, you're getting new information, and it's something unknown to you, right? Like you have no idea what the other person's going to say. You can't word for word write out what they're going to say. You can't predict it. So listening can feel really vulnerable because you're in a place of like unknown, not being completely in control. And I think sometimes that's why we'll interrupt or we'll feel like we need to like, you know, explain over the other person. I think, you know, have you ever had that experience where like you're in a conversation and the other person's like, oh yeah, I understand. And they go off on this whole tangent of how they understand what you're saying. And you're like, this is not at all where I was trying to go with that. And it's not because they want to engage with you in the conversation, but it can feel really vulnerable to be in a slow conversation or to be in silence with someone. Like those are parts of listening. So there's that, just the receptivity. And then there's like, as a listener, sometimes we have to kind of parse out what we're actually hearing. We have to kind of like sort out the information. And like figure out like what doesn't make sense here, or what do I need to fill in the gaps with. And so as a writer or a communicator or speaker, it's my job to make it make listening the easiest job I can, right? So I want to say things in the most clear way possible. I want to say things in the most comprehensible way possible. And so that the other person doesn't have to do a lot of work to listen to me. But then the listener also gets to engage and be curious in a way that makes the speaking and the writing easier too. You know, so when you have somebody who's curious and engaged and willing to like do the work to understand you, and you have someone who's working to be understood, who's putting in effort to make what they're saying as simple and as easy to understand as possible, like that's where really great communication comes from. That's where really great learning comes from. And like both parties end up better off. So whether you're the one speaking or like producing the thing to be listened to, or you're the listener, like you both have a role in the listening, in the exchange, and in what gets taken away from that conversation. Because if you're not like jiving and you're not understood and the other person isn't comprehending it, then the wrong thing or nothing gets taken away from the conversation. So that's where I see listening being like really this like active role that you take. And it's like a skilled role that we can each work on that, and we can each work on how am I communicating in a way that's making it easier for me to be a person to be listened to. So like just a small example, you know, if I ask my kids a question, they will try to like kind of deflect or tangent off. And like, I need a simple answer to the simple question that I just asked you so that we can continue on. And those are just ways that like, I try to slow them down, you know, listen to the question, then answer the question, and not get too wrapped up in like the speed of getting to some result. Because otherwise we're not like staying on the same page through the exchange.
I love that, Stina. That was brilliant. Well said. I also love how you've related good communication to good sex. There's, you know, the reception, the penetration. And would you speak to that too? Because that's just so Stina Marie unique.
Just want me to talk about good sex. Where do we begin? Well,
Right?
I think
how communication is good sex, or vice versa.
how good communication is good sex. Yeah, I mean, what I just said about being the receiver or the giver, like it's both people's active role to make it a good experience. Um, in sex, if you have one person who's not curious and not open, or who's like attached to doing it one way, right? Like I have had experiences where like you try to communicate, that's not working for me. That doesn't like feel particularly good. And if you have a partner that's like not getting it and not changing, they're attached to that thing that they're doing, like it becomes very unpleasant. And like it erodes the trust in the relationship, right? Because I'm speaking up, I'm saying this thing, I feel like I'm being very clear with you, and you keep, kind of steamrolling what I'm saying. Um, I had what was truly like a 1 in a million experience for me. I've never had this with a client asked me to interview someone that they were affiliated with. And I was in touch with that person to set up a call. And it was the worst experience I've ever had trying to get someone to schedule a call with me. The person wanted me to call their personal number, which I did not have and do not do. They like continued to be very flighty about when they were available, continued to reiterate that I should call them even after I'd given very clear instruction. I need you on Zoom so I can record the interview so that I can write an article from it. Like, and it was just this round and round in a circle till I finally had to say to this fully grown human, I will not be able to call you. I'm going to need you to put this on your schedule or set yourself a reminder so that you can meet me on a scheduled Zoom call. I will need to record it. Then I will need to write the article from it. It's just like, I was like, I truly don't know how I can be more clear about what I'm saying. And in the end, after 7 emails or something, the person said, oh, actually, I'm not comfortable being recorded, so I'm going to decline the interview. And I just like, I was truly astounded. And being as clear as I am and as practiced as I am at communication, I didn't take any of it personally. Like I'm laughing about it still because I was just like, this is unbelievable. Like, is this person not reading the email that I'm sending? Like it's all right here. And so I think that's another like benefit to having that confidence and the clarity, because just like in sex, if your partner says, I don't like that, you're not like, oh, they're saying I'm a terrible lover. Oh, they're saying that I don't care about them. Oh, they don't like anything that I do. I can't satisfy them. Like that's taking it personally. You're just like, let's try something else. Right. And it's not, it doesn't exacerbate the moment. It doesn't turn into more than what it needs to. It remains like a simple request and something for improving, and like curiosity then continues to be welcomed in, because the more often you can tell somebody no or I don't like that, and they're willing to work with you to a better understanding, like the better your communication becomes. Like your quality will just exponentially increase when you have that level of trust with somebody that like is on your team.
Let's stay with the good sex. I thought that was brilliant. Once I understood that a conversation is a co-creation, I was able to let go of the outcome, so to speak. Like I started understanding that I'm not alone determining results, and that it's really about me accepting myself first, so that I'm not stuck in my head trying to prove myself, or talking or listening out of fear of being found that I'm not doing anything good enough, or that's like the invitation to be complimented and to make it a co-creation. And it's a discovery. It's like it's something that you figure out together. When you enter a conversation, you never know where that's going to go. Like that's the beauty of it, that it is something that you create together, and it's an experience for both parts. I love that. Mm-hmm.
I do love the sex aspect of it. But my mind is still stuck right now on the email. So I have to address that real quick because um, as somebody that has not always been able to clearly communicate my boundaries, um, and as somebody who frequently sees things from both sides of the conversation, um, I very much just put myself in the other person's shoes of like what might they have been feeling when they kept not reading your email altogether to see what your request was or your need to interview them and to get it done, or what were they not comfortable telling you because there was no trust and they couldn't allow them, whether that trust was with you or trust themselves, to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this sooner. And instead they just ignored it, pretended that they didn't see it, or maybe they did and just still ignored it. And like, I'm only going to respond to this part, and this is how you need to communicate with me. Had they just been clearer from the beginning and open to be like, nope, that doesn't work for me. Here are some ways that you can contact me. And once they clearly knew that a phone call wasn't it for you, being a little bit more open-minded and flexible to come up with another solution if there even was room for one. So I was very much thinking about like, what were they not comfortable doing, articulating that to you or letting themselves say no. And maybe it was both. But coming back to the sex, because I do like this correlation, I have had partners in the past that when I did speak up and say, this isn't really working for me, let's try it this way, or maybe let's do this instead, or would you be open and willing to try this? And then being kind of, I think the phrase you used was steamrolled, Stina, that they just keep doing it with the way that they want to do it. And so I have had moments where I, in the past, felt very unheard, even when I was clearly speaking up and feeling safe to communicate that this does not work for me. This is not enjoyable. This does not feel good. This is not something that I want. And still being open to trying it other ways, not completely closing off that conversation, but then being closed off on their end and receptive to and open to change and trying things a different way. So now that I've seen the other side of that too, and what open communication during sex can look like, and how vulnerable that we both get to be in trying new things and listening to each other, and it just makes for such a better experience on both ends. And we both walk away feeling like, okay, I feel seen, I feel heard, I know what my partner wants, and it feels good. And so that level of listening, it definitely, it takes some practice to get there. And I there's no going back, right? Once you experience the better way, there you're like, what the hell was I doing before? So yeah, recognizing that for myself has been kind of liberating. Anyone else on the sex and communication and listening aspect of it? Or do we want to approach it from another way? And if not, then what I'm hearing is we might be good for today. Does everybody feel complete? And if so,
I just have a little addition.
Oh, okay.
Because it's not that people are other good listeners or they're not. Listening can be trained, but you have to practice it actively. And I just want to share how we did it with the Leadership by Heart group. We had listening circles just on Zoom like this, where we would talk one at a time. The other ones would be muted, and we could talk for 5 minutes about ourselves or whatever we wanted to talk about. It didn't matter. But the other participants, it could be 3, it could be 10, they had to be quiet. They could not respond. They could not show in any way that they were reacting to what you were saying. So we were just supposed to just listen and look interested, if you know what I mean. So we would be actively listening to the person talking, and it's so difficult to find something to talk about yourself for 5 minutes. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life. But it's a great exercise, and you really get to practice that by focusing on people talking about things and knowing that you don't have to respond, you don't have to have an answer, you can just let yourself be open for what they're saying. So that was a great exercise for people if they want to take it into their work or whatever.
Or were the listeners allowed to like nod or anything, or just they could nod?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we could nod, like
Okay.
we hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes over nodding is almost like interrupting or going, yep, 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 yep. Can like feel to the talker like you're just trying to speed them up so that you can get a word in edgewise. So like even not responding with words, real words. Yep, aren't real words. can throw the speaker off track as well. You know, they lose their train of thought or their synergy, and it is a sign that someone isn't really listening. I mean, like you see that in those courses, someone's teaching on being a good listener. So that's one of the things to watch out for.
I was in one group one time and no one expressed anything. It was like talking to a frozen picture. That was terrible, because I was like, can they hear me? Are they, you know, I became really insecure when I didn't get any feedback, no smiles, no nodding, nothing. And that made me really insecure about what I was communicating, and so I'm I'm probably doing too much, because I'm talking with my face. When people are talking, I'm smiling and ooh, and you know, I'm communicating that I'm hearing them, and probably too much.
Yeah, that
What
throws
makes
me off too. Jenny came into a group on Zoom with that, like really dead energy. Jump in there.
what? I don't remember this. You get to share.
Oh, you did an event where people were pretty deadpan. Their expression and their energy was pretty flat too.
Sure. Well, it's so that's another topic also, to protect our energy in those situations. What came to mind for me is that what makes the difference when someone is like or they're you know, if it's all about, do I sense that their intention is caring? If the intention is caring, then that might just be the natural organic expression of them, like taking everything in. I know I'm very much like that. I will go, I'll make really like sounds when I'm listening. But then you can sense if a person is like trying to get in there and like they want to, you know, get in the middle of everything, and they have stuff to say too, and they're more focused on themselves. And then that becomes this disturbance for me. So it's so much about the intention. And I just like a tip is when I'm about to connect with someone, or I'm about to do a Zoom with a new connection, just to enter like their profile, and I'll just like be present with them in my mind, and I'll just have really caring intentions towards them and think about the ways that I can, you know, support them. And when you enter a conversation and you're truly caring for this human being, and it might even, that's a great tip if you're entering a conversation where there's a conflict, or like there's something that's making you feel insecure, that just focusing your attention towards care for this person is going to make you curious in where they are truly at, and how you can connect in the situation. So,
Jenny, you just reminded me to add to the listening conversation that human design generators should be saying all of the ums and the and making all of the yummy noises, because people love that. Like specifically from a generator, I think it feels lovely when people are, responsive, but particularly generators, it's something like that energy is very like magnetic. So when you are like leaning in and going, like it doesn't feel like an interruption usually to the other person. And that also reminded me of an article I read, and I cannot remember what the terms were used, but they were talking about different styles of communication. And my partner and I, when we're talking, like we constantly like talk in and out of each other's sentences and things, like, and it's not actually an interruption. It's like we're joining each other. We're so excited about what we're talking about. We're creating something together. It's like this very lively discussion. There are times when like it's too much and you're like, okay, I just need to like get this out. But there are people where like that feels normal. It feels good. They enjoy that. It's just kind of expected. And there's other people that think if you're interrupting me or you're talking over me at all, it's just rude and you're not listening. So part of listening is like feeling out, how the other person responds to your input. When you make these sounds, does it seem to encourage them? Like Dorrit was saying, like if you just have like you're talking to a wall, it does not feel good. Like we want to know that we're talking to another human who can emote and who can relate and like register and respond, register what we're saying, respond to what we're saying. But we can kind of like feel that out and see like what's exciting this person, what's encouraging them, what's opening them up, what's what did they seem to kind of be leaning into when we do it, and then do that. And it's something that's like practiced but kind of intuitive as well. It's not like you have to be like thinking the whole, okay, what can I do now, and try. It's just that like over time getting comfortable with yourself and your own responses and seeing like how do other people respond to them, because ultimately that's what you want. You want to open the other person up. You want to encourage them. You want to make them feel seen and heard. So
Yeah, so as a generator, making your sounds, that's super important. If your sounds are seeming to throw another person off or they're losing their train of thought, you can just go on mute and keep making your sounds, right? Because that's so generator. Yeah.
As a manifesting generator, for me, it's more like the yeses and the nos, like as opposed to the ums and the mm-ums. Like they're same but different. But like I find that even when I'm listening to the four of you, I often then come off mute and I'm like, ooh, I love what you just said. And it's like a yes, this is what hit for me. And then I take it a step further and I reiterate that thing that just resonated with me, because in case anybody else missed it, like I want to like recap what just happened, right? So that's the part of active listening for me that like allows me to let the other person know that yes, I heard what you're saying. Here's what I took in from that. And if in my recap I misinterpreted that, that's also your opportunity to correct me and like say, I did say that, but here's what I actually meant with this. And so I love that back and forth, that dialogue that you get to continue from that when you're actively participating and listening to a conversation, to let the person know that, yeah, this is what I heard you say. Here's what I got from that. What else would you like to add to it? Kind of thing. And I love that we can do that more openly. And also, the other thing that I frequently do with clients is I ask a lot of questions. I ask questions from curiosity, not because like I necessarily need to know the answer to them, but those questions are all rooted in like, let's unpack that a little bit more. Say more about that thing. What's coming up for you? Why did you say that? Oh, as opposed to this? Like, what made you go there instead of this way? And like, it's because I genuinely want to know how your brain works. Like, how did you come to that? My brain goes a mile a minute. I know that. I know that if anybody, if because I've tried mind mapping and like having that flow chart of like, here's what things would look like if this happened, this happened, this happened. But it's not a straight line, and it's not even an up and down or like a circle, so to speak. It's like this way, that way, this way, that like, and then because as a manifesting generator, circling back to that, I always feel like I need to inform everybody of how I got to that, like why I'm doing the thing that I'm doing, or say, how did I get here in my brain, so that if I'm a million miles ahead of you, you can catch up and like be on that same, get you back on that same path with me. So I ask a lot of curious questions because I want to know, how did that person get to that conclusion? How did they get to that idea or that desire, that feeling, whatever it is that's coming up? And I think the recaps and the questions go a long way, especially in the work that I do when I have conversations with people, and even in the conversations that we openly have right here. And I do want to give you the opportunity to speak as well and add to this, Stina. So,
Oh, I'm patiently waiting. I just know if I'm unmuted, then you know that there's somebody that
yeah.
add. Because when you said, I don't really do sounds, but sometimes I'll say, ooh, I love what you said. And I thought if you just go through the vowels, ah, oh, ooh, and then you have like the like the more kind of like we make those like disgusted sounds, or you kind of go like like we have so many expressive sounds, and in human design, if you're a manifesting generator, you may have your sacral, which is the generator of the energy, connected to your throat, in which case you may actually have a more verbal yes, yeah, like words that come out. But a pure generator will not have that connection. So it's typically not like the yes and no. But I always encourage everybody to like see how sounds feel to you, see how words feel to you, like what comes most naturally. Because for me, it's like, like, that's the yummy yes to me. It's not I don't say like it just feels weird. And I don't say like I would be like, mm. It's not even a word. It's just it's almost a cringe or a wince kind of feeling with it. The other thing that you do a lot, Shell, when you're hosting, when you unmute yourself, is you take a breath and then you just like, and that's another sound, right? It's a very airy sound, but it's like that is a way that you engage all of us in just sort of like taking a second to like register, like to let it settle, to let what we just listened to kind of settle. And I think that's really cool too. So I just wanted to point those out. And then very briefly add that in improv, instead of saying, no, that's not what I said, you always use the term yes and. And I think that's an incredible little tool to have as a listener. If you have something to add or correct or kind of redirect, is saying yes and da 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 da. Because as soon as you say, no, that's not what I meant, or no, it's not like that, like the other person, like you're eroding that trust and that connection. The more times that you kind of like cut someone off in that way. So yes, and like I'm excited to hear what you're about to say, as soon as I hear that. So it keeps the scene rolling in improv.
I've always wanted to take an improv class. It's been something that's not been on my bucket list or my foreseeable, like I could totally see myself doing it, but it scares the thought of it scares the crap out of me. So I'm kind of like, I will do this at some point because I'm just gonna like see what else can happen.
Do it. The thing is that nobody goes to improv and is like, I'm going to rock this. I'm going to be so good at this. It's going to be great. Everybody's like, this is going to be awkward as AF. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And so everyone's fumbling through it at the same pace. Nobody knows what they're doing. It's like being a kid on a playground. And I think that it's such a great experience, and it's not something anybody has to feel like they have to perform at. So, and you don't have to be funny either. That was actually something we learned in improv. They said, don't try to be funny. Funny will just happen. So,
Yeah, that's the beauty of improv. Yep. Very much a non-duality exercise. And I love that's like my favorite exercise, the yes and one. Can you give an example? Can you think of anything real quick of an example of this person says this, then this person says yes and then says this? That might be helpful if you
oh,
can
I
think of
mean,
it.
like an improv exercise they had us do. One,
Yeah, an example of this person said this, and then
yeah,
this person did the yes
it was
and
so
then they said
like
this.
we did one where person A is going to hand person B an item. Okay. And so person A just makes the gesture and hands this other person something. And you say, thank you so much for the beach ball, and you receive it. And the other person then says, yes, and I can't wait to take it to the beach with you. And so, like, you build on that together. And then you can go back and forth with it. And the next person might say, yes, and I'm going to bring my giant volleyball net to go with it. And the next person says, yes, and let's not forget to pack the drinks with it. Like, you're building, building, building. You don't say, no, actually, it's a basketball, right? Like, you don't do that in improv. And it's such an incredible way to respect other people's ideas and creativity. There's no bad ideas, there's no wrong answers. You just fully open yourself to whatever comes next and like build on it and run with it. Changes the energy completely.
And you're not necessarily handing them a prop or an object. It can be totally just pretend.
Totally
Like
invisible.
it usually is. Yeah. Yeah. It's using your imagination. You'd be so good at improv with all your creativity, Shell. The only thing you see you getting stuck with is like, wait, which of my 50 million ideas am I going to say right now? that keeps you fully present too. In that, as a manifesting generator, it'd be easy for you too because you can get that kind of that soul to soul connection, and you would just pick up on it really. Yeah.
Yeah, that sometimes when I am listening to people speak and or like you've all shared multiple ideas before I unmute myself to come back to the conversation and add more of myself. And in the process, I do have those moments still where I am very much like, ooh, like I want to say this, but like I don't want to interrupt the other person. And then like, but when that time comes around for me to add to it, I'm like, that time is gone. Like that doesn't fit here anymore. I'm gonna move on to what's good right here. And so also in those moments when I unmute myself and take a deep breath, I'm like, which thing makes sense right now for me to say? Because if I'm still back there on and I am actively like trying to continually let go of the thoughts that don't serve the conversation if that moment has already passed, because I don't want to say something that I thought 5 minutes ago, but we're already like on that conversation of like sex and listening, or like unless I specifically in terms of like that email where I was like, "Ooh, I just can't let this go. I need to take it back there for a second, and then I'll bring it back to like what we were here on." There's definitely those moments of like, what can I letting, and it's part of letting go of control too, of like the conversation can go where it needs to go. And I have and that's also why I don't script anything with these conversations. That's why it just flows from inside me. I don't want to, I was going to say the heart, but it's not just my heart. It's like everything all comes together and it's whatever comes out. And that's what makes it beautiful. So it does inspire me to jump in and try the improv all more, because I'm like, all right, it could be a basketball or a beach ball or a volleyball or whatever the thing is, and I'm just gonna run with it, and it gets to be whatever the other person contributes, and then whatever we add to it together. So I love those ideas, how they all like mesh and we get to listen. And also how I unpack those things that everybody shares. And I'm like, nope, let go of that, let go of it. And that's part of like my energy of like, I really enjoy this conversation and I don't want to get stuck here. So recapping some of the great things that we talked about today, which is listening to ourselves, listening to each other, communicating with each other, and being open to hearing what people are sharing in front of you, holding space for them to be better listeners and partners and communicators with each other. And we talked about so many different ways that we could do that better for ourselves and better for people on the other side of the conversation. Whether you are watching now or on the replay, please leave us a comment. Let us know what you are taking away from when we listen. And if there's something that we haven't covered yet that you want to hear more about, please let us know that as well so that we can make sure to dive into it on a future High Vibe conversation. Until that time, please follow us on LinkedIn, connect with us. We'd love to have more conversations with you as well. And until then, we'll say bye for now. Do my little dance as we